What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MKO Pugilism Boxing channel where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, hit the bell notification, put that thing on all so you can get notified of our latest ventures, latest content. Whenever it comes out, you'll be the first to know. So, yeah, today's subject, we're looking at my man Josh Warrington. Obviously, he just had the loss to Mauricio Lara, and a lot of people are saying his career is over. So we're just going to talk a bit about the fight and whether I think his career is over now. So the fight was a bit of a surprise opponent. He was looking at, I think, a Kanzu fight originally. There were things that fell through. So this opponent, Lara, was a guy that basically came in, and it was a bit short notice for both guys in terms of knowing about each other and time to study for one another. Lara, the significant thing with him was that he actually had 4 fights in 2020. So Lara had been very active. He'd been busier than a lot of boxers. I mean, 4 fights in 2020, that's good going. That's definitely good going. And I think that activity that he had last year definitely served him well in his fight. As far as Warrington goes, he fought aggressively with Lara. But the problem that he was continually having is that he couldn't match Lara for power. You know, he couldn't match Lara's power. He fought his normal sort of aggressive fight, punches in bunches, did Warrington, but again, he couldn't match him for power. I think certain problems he had in his fight were that he didn't move his head. A lot of fighters have this thing where they like to be up close and personal with guys. They want to fight on the front foot, but then they don't move their head. And I think with Warrington, that was one of the biggest problems he had in his fight, was that he wasn't moving his head off the center. And I find when you're attacking guys, you know, that's one of the most important things. You got to make it kind of deceptive. You got to fool them a little bit. You got to do a bit of, you know, Mike Tyson was excellent at doing this. Joe Frazier was excellent at doing this, to name 2 obvious examples. Like, you're coming forward on guys, you might flick a jab out, throw a hard jab out there, and then move. And you're never on the center line. You're never coming forward in straight lines. And I think Warrington really needed that, but he didn't have that. He was coming forward in a straight line and backwards in a straight line too. So he wasn't a hard target to hit. And also, he fought, you know, a good thing about him, he although he was coming off worse when both were having, when they were both exchanging punches, he did fight valiantly when he got knocked down, because he got knocked down quite early in this fight, but he did come back and he fought valiantly, and that's something to commend with him. He definitely doesn't lack in the heart department, because you could see from the time he got knocked down first time, his legs were gone. You could see he had no footing beneath him, but he was still on his instinct, sort of swinging back, fighting back, moving. Somehow he managed to survive a little bit. Again, I think certain things that were lacking. I think a jab was definitely lacking from Warrington's game. And when I say a jab, I'm not talking a flicking jab. I think he was lacking a hard, deliberate jab, because I think against a guy like Lara, you need to find something to deter him. And although Warrington's not the biggest puncher, I think what would have helped him is a hard, deliberate jab where you ram it down the guy, you ram it in the guy's face all the time, so the guy knows that every time he approaches you, bang, it's going to be there, it's going to hit him. And I think that would have at least, even if that wouldn't have hurt Lara or anything like that, at least it would make him think that, right, every time I'm coming in on this guy, I'm going to get hit with this jab every time and I think that's something that was missing from his game. And he's not the only one. There's a lot of guys who don't really throw a proper jab, and I think in this fight, that was definitely one of the major pieces to the puzzle that was missing, is a hard, deliberate jab in his face every time he comes in. So you might step back, bang, whack him with it, or you might step forward with it or double it and make it hard. And I think something like that would have at least gave Lara something to think about, but that was missing from his game there. And you know, Warrington, as I've said previously, he was moving back and forth, but it's all in straight lines, and there was too much straight line movement, and that's what made him such an easy target for Lara, because it was all done in straight lines. I mean, what he needed was a bit of lateral movement, bit of side to side head movement, as I mentioned earlier in the video, a bit of side to side, head never on the center line, bit of movement with the feet, using the ring a bit more. Things like that are what I believe he needed in this fight, but that's what was lacking. He didn't have any of that. It was all done in straight lines, making him such an easy target. I mean, you know, he needed to give Lara different angles, different looks in this fight, but there was none of that. It was all straight line stuff, no angles, no different looks, and that's what cost him, really. There was no sort of variation. It was very straight up and down what he done in that ring. It was brave and everything, but it was very straightforward, very straight up and down, and it wasn't hard for Lara to really figure out. I mean, it also didn't help Warrington that his inactivity. He had one fight in about 16 months, and he wasn't particularly, I think there might have been a lack of sharpness in his game, and definitely lack of jab. I mean, the good points really were on Lara's side was that we could see from the first bell he was accurate, and he was heavy-handed, and it was interesting because he throws arcing shots, he throws wide shots, but he was that sharp, Lara was, that he had the timing on point. So that even you look at the shots and it looks like a swing, it looks like a looping shot, but he was timing it so well and he was landing it. And that was an interesting thing about this fight. You look at the shots he was throwing, they looked wide, and sometimes they didn't look like tight and tidy, but they were all accurate, and he was getting the timing on point. Boom, boom, boom. Every time he threw something, he was landing it. And because Warrington was straight lines in what he was doing, he was a sitting duck for a lot of these shots. He was very hittable in this fight. And Lara, you know, he wasn't that elusive himself, but he knew that he had that power, and he hit that bit harder than Warrington there. So yeah, his accuracy was definitely something I noticed, and his timing was brilliant, because whatever he threw, he was more or less landing at will. You know, he had no problem landing, and as I've said, he was landing frequently, and the shots that he was throwing, they were power shots. You know, Lara wasn't a guy who was messing about. He wasn't a guy who was really sort of going behind the jab. It was all aggressive hooks, uppercuts, and these shots were hard, and they were with mean intentions. And unlike some of these guys that brawl and they throw lots of punches, this guy, he was accurate. And I noticed about him, you know, loads of these punches, they were power shots, and he had no problem of getting through, hitting Josh Warrington, and he had no problem getting close to Josh Warrington, because as I mentioned before, there was no jab, there was no deterrent, there was no security on the door to block him and stop him from getting inside, because he needed to fight on the inside at close range, and there was nothing coming from Josh Warrington to stop him, so he got inside easily. You know, as I've said, he's had 4 fights last year to Warrington's 1 fight in 1 year or 60 months, whatever. And again, you know, with this guy, brilliant. He showed that he's definitely a classy guy, definitely could be a force to be reckoned with, Lara. There is, from what I heard, there is a rematch clause, but whether or not Warrington will call for it, I think Warrington in recent days has said that if there is a rematch, he'll go for it and he'll jump at the chance, and he sort of knows what he done wrong. But I reckon his people and his team will probably steer him away from this guy, because it's one of those where you had a tough fight, you got beaten up, you got battered, so he'll probably want sort of maybe a bit of an easier night's work. But it'll be interesting. I mean, tell me what you guys think. Do you think he should take an immediate rematch with Lara? Do you think he should leave it? Many people have been saying now that with that loss, Josh Warrington he's over, he's finished. There's nothing more for him to do. He's had a good little run. He's finished now with that loss. That's it, career over. I, however, disagree with that. I don't think his career's over. There's been several fighters, if not many great fighters, have had humiliating defeats, have had knockout defeats. I mean, you look at the heavyweight division, it happens a lot. I mean, it happened to Dillian Whyte with Joshua, and it happened to him with Povetkin. He's coming back. You know, even Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas, the most humiliating ever, one of the biggest upsets. Mike Tyson still came back. He still did damage, and all of these guys, Ali, Frazier. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Warrington's in that category. You know, you think of Duran, Leonard, all these guys, they had losses on their records. They've all been hurt. They've all been put down before. And it didn't necessarily end their career. Guys like Nigel Benn, he got battered by Michael Watson, came back and still won world titles. So I don't think his career's over just due to this one loss. I mean, we can't forget the top guys he has fought. He surprised me by beating both Lee Selby and Carl Frampton. I mean, in both of those fights, I fancied Selby to beat him. I didn't think he would be able to beat Selby because I thought, you know, he doesn't really have the power. He doesn't have the heavy-handedness there to beat a guy like that. So, I mean, I think he's already accomplished a fair bit. I think he should probably steer away from this guy Lara just for the time being. I mean, if he feels in himself that, yeah, I can get this rematch, I mean, he might be able to do something, I don't know, but I would say for the time being, his career's not over. I think all he needs is, he needs a rest. He needs a little rest and a bit of time out, you know, take some time out for most of this year, maybe have a comeback fight sometime towards the end of this year. Not the best guy, and just build yourself back up again. I think with Josh Warrington, there's no need to sort of call it a day just yet. This is one loss. He had a good record going up into this. He'd fought a few good names there, so I think his career is definitely not over for me. I think he's still got some years left. That was a hard fight. That was a taxing fight. I understand what Carl Frampton said, that he doesn't think he'll come back from it, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, boxing is this is the nature of the sport. You go through losses, go through ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And I think, again, one defeat, even a bad defeat like this, should not and does not spell the end for a fighter. I think he can still come again. I think he can amend what he done tactically wrong, and if he does face Lara again, it will just be a case of, he'll know now you can't trade with a guy like Lara. You've got to box on the back foot. You've got to have movement, lateral movement, head movement. You've got to give this guy different angles, different looks, and that's how you'll end up successful if you fight him again. So yeah, anyway, that's just my thoughts on the issue. I think he can still carry on. And until next time, it's MKO Pugilism over and out. I'll catch you on the next one. Let me know what you think.